Well, good afternoon. This session is entitled Empowering Effective Trans Allies in the Workplace, but also society at large. Because I think we can't, as a society, ignore the difference in the workplace, and in the workplace we can't ignore what goes on in society. So this is going to try and talk to you from both perspectives. And of course, the ultimate objective here is to be a better trans ally, more so than you probably are already. So let me just talk you through some of this. So we're going to start with a bit of boundaries. I have boundaries. I'm sure you have boundaries. So we need to respect each other, create a safe space here that we can share and grow and have knowledge from a position of respect. There will be time for Q&A at the end. Also appreciate that language evolves. My use of language, your use of language may well have evolved differently. So we just respect that each person's language and how they describe themselves may differ. And of course, respecting the fact that there are other identities. So I speak through the lens of a trans woman in her late 50s, and you may well have other definitions of your own identity: transmasculine, non-binary, gender fluid, gender queer, whatever, however you describe yourself. So whilst I don't speak through anybody else's lens, I try to reference different identities wherever I can. So some basic objectives to be able to recognise and understand some of the challenges that LGBTQ+, queer, trans, non-binary, gender diverse individuals face in the workplace and of course society, and how we as employers, as colleagues, can become better allies who can advocate by learning language and other important elements that help trans, queer people thrive, and not just survive, but really thrive in the world and at work. So that's what we're hoping to cover today. So the inclusion objective, and I talk about this when I talk about EDI as a broader topic. The big objective, the big idea here is positive people experiences. I always think that's the output of any EDI, D&I, whatever work we talk about, allyship. We want to create a positive experience for people in the recruitment process, talent acquisition, for people as colleagues, people who are our customers, our stakeholders, the people that we interact with. So what we're trying to do is create a positive experience so that I, as someone who interacts with you as an organisation, you as a person, comes away feeling positive about that interaction. That's really what we're trying to do here, is achieve this positive experience for everybody. And most importantly, this week, Trans Awareness Week, for trans, non-binary people as well. But we're quite judgmental, aren't we, as a society? I know we are. I have my own judgments. I walk around the world. I'm looking at people. I'm people watching. I'm sure you people watch. A lot of that is our biases and the threat analysis, looking for danger, making sure that we're recognising that people we're interacting with are safe or not safe, whatever that may be. Or maybe we're looking for a mate, someone we can be attracted to. So we're constantly on the alert. And we're clocking people and ruling people in and ruling people out. And as Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, says, is everyone is someone else's weirdo. Isn't that so true? When we look in the mirror, sometimes we forget that we are somebody else's weirdo as well, no matter how normal and typical we think we are. So really, it's important to recognise we have these biases, we have these judgments. It's about how we can filter them out of our heads. And I think when we think about transgender, diverse, non-binary people, we don't always tick the typical box. We kind of don't fit on that bell curve normality in terms of how we look, how we sound, how we dress, how we express ourselves. And I'm well aware that scares people sometimes. We're disrupting the status quo, disrupting the norm of society, whatever that may mean to some people. So we've got to try and reserve judgment. We've got to reserve stepping into that place where we're discriminating or creating bias based on our perception of somebody. Because often it reflects on who we are rather than just them. So let's think about some of the daily reality. I'm going to give you a few stats here, just to put in context why it's important to do the work we do. So, according to a UK Total Jobs Trans Experience Survey back in 21, which was rerun after the one they ran in 2016. So, 52% in 2016 of trans people hid their gender status or history at work, and that rose to 65% in 2021. So you see the tide turned. I think we look back, I think it was 2018 where Theresa May's government were looking to instigate the Gender Recognition Act reform, and they tabled this. And this kind of woke up a lot of people to suddenly start talking about their anti-trans or their trans negative or the trans aggressive status, and talk about trans people less positively in society. So we can see that real shift probably sparked at that 2018 Gender Recognition Act reform that failed, obviously. And it suddenly woke up this anti-trans rhetoric that's occurred. So I think that's reflecting it. That maybe, hopefully Social Jobs will run a survey again similarly in a couple of years' time, and we'll see how that's impacting. Good news. Less trans people said they've experienced discrimination in work in the last 5 years. And I think that reflects the work that organisations such as yourself, other corporates are doing to promote trans awareness amongst their colleagues and staff. So I think that, again, whilst we see the increase in people who are scared to be open or because of the negativity in society, we've also seen a decrease in people who have experienced discrimination at work because there are so many more organisations focusing on work like we're doing today and bringing trans discussions out into the open. So in 2021, again, this survey, 43% of trans workers said they believe acceptance and understanding has improved. So again, reinforcing this, the work that you, other organisations are doing is lifting and amplifying trans awareness and creating workplaces that are better than they were, despite the fact that people are more afraid to come out. So we are seeing positivity, so it's not all doom and gloom. But if we look back, this was put out in March 2023, Home Office report here, 4,732 hate crimes were recorded against transgender people. That's a rise of 11%. So you look at, there's been 2 high-profile news articles about young trans people who have died this year. Brianna Ghey is probably one of the people that comes to mind. So we are seeing more and more hate crimes against transgender people. And I think this also reflects what's going on in society, the negative coverage in the mainstream media. We even have our Prime Minister and senior government ministers standing on stage at a conference, effectively negating trans people in society. And when their heads of government are making these statements, it's no surprise, if you like, that is reflected in almost enabling people to express their hate, or for however you want to describe it. I think we saw similar sort of things at the Remembrance Day parade around the pro-Palestinian, anti-Palestinian rhetoric that was going on. Again, maybe the climate of our political sphere is enabling people to hold these extreme views and weaponize them as such. So this is a shock. I was at the Trans and City event the other night, and this statistic came out. Over 7,000 negative news stories appeared in the mainstream media over the last 12 months. And you can quickly do the maths. This is several a day. Yeah, several a day. And the onslaught is relentless. And as a trans woman myself, and anybody else in the audience who is trans, not binary, or a strong ally, will have seen the rise of these news stories day in, day out. If it's not sport, it's prisons. If it's not prisons, it's young children. If it's not young children, it's about women's safety in toilets and things. All of this largely directed at trans feminine people. But that knock-on effect is to people who are non-binary and also trans-masculine. So we can't just say it's all about trans feminine people getting all the abuse. Trans-masculine people are also getting caught up in this debate around how we're impacting women and girls. And I saw something from Australia. So similar things happening in the other side of the world now, and spreading across English-speaking countries. So we, as allies, and that's what we're here for today, need to be aware of what's going on in the world to understand what's going on in my world, in my head, and what the support that I and people like me who are trans, gender diverse, non-binary also experience. Is that okay? Well, it's not okay, but just let that sink in for a second. So the reality around the world, and this is kind of an LGBT reality, and we shouldn't forget this, that most governments around the world deny trans people the right to legally change their name and gender from that assigned at birth. Ones that do, there are still many that require trans people to be sterilised or have surgery in order to qualify to have their names or their identity validated in law. There's still the death penalty for many queer people in countries around the world, and I think it's been evidenced that it still occurs in 8 of those countries, but it's still criminalised in many more. I think it's 72 countries, And in 45 of those, the law applies to women as well. There were, this statistic, I think was last year, there was 1,612 trans people murdered across 62 countries. That's an equivalent of a trans person being killed every 2 days. Most of that does occur in Brazil and North America, but we are also, as I highlighted earlier, we are seeing young trans people and older trans people experiencing hate crime, serious violence, wounding, and in some cases being killed as well. A quarter of the world's population believe that being queer or trans or LGBT should be a crime. A quarter of the world's population. Wow. And in more than half the world, LGBTQ+, QIA+ people may not be protected from discrimination in the workplace. So again, this is the kind of reality. And trans people are often, and non-binary people are often amplified within the overall LGBTQ+ as being even more disproportionately affected. So the impact, 40% of trans workers feel that co-workers harbour anti-trans opinion. And this is a real worry. And maybe reflects on the first stat I showed you. Is, we saw recently some employment appeal tribunals that effectively green-lighted people holding protected beliefs. So that people now in your workplace can hold a protected belief that trans people are not valid, however they describe it. And that's not necessarily been enshrined in law, but it's given the green light to people to express their views. So again, I think my concern is, when I walk around the streets, when I walk into buildings, when I go to companies to speak at sessions like this, is encountering somebody who holds critical views about me. Do I have to defend myself? I'm heightened alert. I'm ready to defend myself. So that puts a real huge load on me, cognitive load. We talk about psychological safety. I want to be able to bring myself to this space knowing that I'm going to be safe. I'm not going to be broken. So 40% of trans workers do feel and worry that they're working with people who hold anti-trans views, or those views may be given the light of day in an organisation, and they feel they have to maybe defend themselves. So again, we need to think about the impact that has in the workplace and also society at large. So the reality we face today, the reality that is commonplace, that I experience, that many others experience, is for some reason it's still socially acceptable to debate, and I mean debate, or ask questions, whatever phrase you want, trans rights in existence. I'm only asking, surely I have the right to ask about trans people, surely I have the right to ask and debate whether your sex assigned at birth, your biological sex is more important in this debate than anything else. Trans people's rights to be housed in the prison if they're unfortunate enough to be convicted of a crime that aligns with their sex assigned at birth rather than their gender identity. Whether people can change their legal gender without a certificate, without psychiatrists. These are kind of debates that people are having, and they feel they've got the right to do this. And I accept there's confusion. I accept that people need to evolve their thinking. But it's still socially acceptable, which I think also fuels the mainstream media, forms of government, and some of the stuff we see out there, is trans people are up for debate. And that's the pressure, this psychological safety lack of that we face, which leads to this onslaught on the newspapers, the toxicity that exists in Twitter or X, if you want to call it that. And it fuels the gender critical or gender hostile transphobic movement, which is obviously well organised and well funded. Because there is no trans agenda, there is no trans lobby, there is no trans cabal of people in an organised fashion. We're just people get on with things. We are people trying to stand up for ourselves. But there is no head of trans in the UK that's doing this lobbying. It's just everyday people saying, hang on a minute, this isn't fair. So we're going to be able to address some of the things that are going on. And I'm not against having a centrist conversation around a table looking for solutions where everybody can win and people don't feel like they're losing. What we have at the moment, we tend to have two polarized views, and those views are very hard to reconcile. So I'm a great believer we need to try and bring this into the middle. Conflicts, wars, atrocities are not resolved by staying on the edges. That people coming together. So if we can have these conversations, you can have these conversations to educate and bring people in around the trans individual experience, our lived experience of just being everyday people getting on with our lives. That's what we need to bring to society. Ezzy Kelly, former chief executive of Stonewall, said, most people are supportive for trans rights. I think I saw a stat earlier this year that this support is dropping because we've seen so much negative media. There's 7,000 articles. This fundamentally is dropping down, where people are starting to question. People are less open to the rights of trans people. So we've got to face this reality again. This onslaught is creating negativity in everyday worlds, in everyday lives. Microaggressions, you've probably heard this phrase, and an insult, and this is where a person intentionally behaves in a discriminatory way. So from an LGBT point of view, it's using words like faggot and dyke and those kind of words. But we're seeing it from a trans perspective. We're seeing it, the parodies, the jokes, the sort of questioning about us. Again, this microaggressions are day in, day out. And if you're not familiar with the term, a microaggression is a subtle, often unintentional, discriminatory way of behaving, interacting, or communicating with somebody of a marginalised or minority characteristic. And it's often so tiny and so small that people go, well, what are you on about? It's no big deal. It's only a little thing. But the impact, again, is this massive, great, big, continual brunt of having to justify your existence. And with assault, you sort of things like you don't look gay, or you'd look better as a woman if you didn't wear that much makeup, or you're wearing the right clothes, or you'll never be a real woman. These kind of assaults that go on. Or you'll never be a real woman. You'll never be a real man. These again, the assaults, the snubs. They tend, off, as I say, most times, they're just people's throwaway remarks. They're judgments they hold. But it's undermining. It others us. It makes us feel like we're something else. We're not good enough to be us. And of course, the invalidation. I'm not transphobic, but sex is binary. Yeah, sex is binary. If you're a woman, you're a woman. If you're a man, you're a man. I seem to remember our Prime Minister saying something similar to that. So again, this is an invalidation of our lived experience. So again, what we've got to try and do is we've got to listen for these remarks, listen for this rhetoric and language. And where possible, we can say, hang on a minute, that's not right. Be able to call it out or call it in. So the dilemma, I think about the dilemma when I experience microaggressions. I think about how it is. First of all, you go, did they call me sir? Did they really call me sir? And you think in your head, maybe I misheard that. Maybe they didn't say sir. Maybe I misheard that. Or when someone calls me mate, was that malicious, or was it just their way of speaking? It's kind of, you're sitting there. Did I hear that? And you think, should I speak up? Should I say something? Oh, hang on a minute. If I say something, it'll make it worse. Maybe they think I'll be overreacting. Maybe I'm going to get aggressive. Maybe all these dilemmas. So what ends up happening is you tend to go, it's just too difficult. I'll just let it go. Don't worry. Don't let it go. But then you spend the rest of the evening, the rest of the week, rest of the day, whatever it may be, talking about this. And I still have conversations with people about microaggressions or words that have been used to me years and years later. I've got anecdotes. While I was going to the chemist, I think, to pick up some prescription medicine. It was completely unrelated, probably antibiotics or something. And the pharmacist behind the counter said, yes, sir, how can I help? I went, seriously, what do I have to do? I don't always wear a dress and makeup and shoes, but I think that day I happened to be. And it's like, come on, bear with me here. Look at me. And then they got really defensive and I said, actually, it's madam, not sir. And they went, what are you talking about? And for me, these microaggressions, these invalidations, they're as impactful as a slap around the face. It's like walking into somewhere and the first thing someone says to you is slap. That's what being called sir feels like here. It basically says to me that I'm not good enough. It says to me, I haven't passed your test. It says to me, I'm not the person I am inside to you. And it really is, sick on the stones, when I break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That isn't true when it comes to discrimination, banter, microaggressions, and disrespecting someone's identity. So we need to learn how impactful words can be. And it's not just physical actions, because those words, as I say, are like the slap on the face. So let me put the challenge back to you as an organisation. Should LGBTQ+, queer, trans, non-binary employees feel anxious about coming out to your organisation? And whether you say, no, they shouldn't, they will be. Because I'm anxious about coming out to my family. I was anxious coming out to my friends, anxious to everybody. Because one of the biggest human fears and anxieties we have is the fear of rejection, the fear of not being good enough, the fear of putting ourselves beyond our comfort zone. And having that conversation with somebody where you don't know the answer, I don't know how you're going to react. I may guess, I may suspect things. I don't know how you're going to react. So what we as an organisation need to do is we need to signpost this explicitly. And yes, some of it is performative, some of it is lanyards, some of it is posters, some of it is the messaging. Sessions like today, showing that you are truly, truly supporting your trans, non-binary colleagues and people. So that I know when I want to have this conversation, because I will have been practicing this conversation in my head for weeks and weeks and months or even years. I will be chatting to my Facebook friends, go, I'm going to do it tomorrow. I'm going to tell people tomorrow. I'm going to tell people tomorrow. I come home from work and they go, how did you get on today? Oh, no, I couldn't. I went to go into my boss and something happened. And I'll try again next week. I've got another meeting. I'll do this. So when I sit down in front of you, I've already had this conversation in my head 100 times, 1,000 times. I'm ready for it. But I know that you're not ready for that conversation. So when I sit down and say this, how do you react? Is a panic, what am I going to do now? Pick the phone up, phone HR, I've got a trans person here, what do I do? Or is it a well-trodden path? Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for trusting me. Tell me, sit down, let's have a conversation. How can I help? What do you want me to do? How can I support you? That should be your first reaction. That should be the way you interact. That should be the way you validate somebody. If you're not sure that you could do that, just like that, then how can we change that? How can we solve that? How can we maybe practice that, have mentoring? How can you prepare yourself for this conversation as a manager's employee? Because if I sat down in front of you and said, I'm pregnant, that's a well-trodden path. Okay, for me, it might be a bit of more of a surprise if I said I was pregnant. But the theory is pregnancy, other workplace events are well-trodden and you know how to react. You know how to deal with that. So I'm trans, I'm non-binary. It should be as matter of fact as many other workplace interactions. And often it's kind of course you are. I knew. And thank you. I thank you for trusting me. Make it really easy. So let's talk a bit about terminology for those of you who are maybe not familiar with some of the lingo. I've talked all about the pressure, what it's like being me in society, some of the real big impactful stuff, trying to give you the why it matters. Let's talk about some of the mechanical stuff, the kind of everyday language. So hopefully we're all fairly familiar with these terms: lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, questioning, allies, pansexual, and straight. And they're kind of words that we use often. And with Google, with other platforms, we could probably find out a lot about it. Some people who are intersex prefer the term DSD, diverse sexual development. Intersex is kind of an evolving term, means people who are born with different, if you like, chromosomal differences or different presentation of sexual organs or primary sexual organs. And there's a whole spectrum of people who have diverse sexual differences. And transgender as a word, it's from the Latin, or the prefix from the Latin, meaning on the other side of my gender identity. I'm a big fan of the word queer. I know that not everybody likes the word queer. Many people grew up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s where queer was pejorative, it's weaponized. But for me, I like it as an identity. I am queer. Don't call me queer, but I am queer, if that makes sense. If you've found something different between a label and an identity, so it's someone who I am. I'm part of a queer community. And again, for me, it's rather than having lots of alphabet letters. For me, queer just means I don't have to define exactly who I am. I'm not straight and I'm not cis. I know that. So queer means I can exist in this bubble of difference away from being straight or not trans. So that's how I can kind of like it. It doesn't narrow my label down. It doesn't narrow my spectrum down. It gives me freedom to be me within a broader area. Pansexual. If you talk about pansexuality versus bisexuality, some people are ardent bisexual identifiers in terms of their sexuality. They're open to sexual relations or romantic relations with persons of the same sex or the opposite sex. I think as pansexuals are multidimensional, so same sex or gender. So we're putting gender in this. In regards to my gender, regardless to your gender, I'm open to a relationship. And of course, let's not forget people are straight, people are not trans as well. So we have to recognise all identities within the LGBTQ plus or queer community. So we talk about this, sex and biology. This is the reality. You are born with bits. You're born with chromosomes. You are the combination of two gametes, a sperm and an egg, and ping, a child is born. You're born with a sex, with the chromosomes. So often you have bits between your legs or no bits between your legs, and some people have bits on the inside. So this is our fundamental sex and biology. No one's disputing the fact that we have chromosomes, we have fundamental primary sex characteristics. We then have our gender identity and expression. So for me, my gender identity is how I perceive myself in the world. How I know I'm in the right queue, how I know I'm living up to societal expectations. It's my definition of self. In the same way that I'm left-handed, I know that I'm left-handed. I pick up a pen or a pencil, and I know it feels comfortable in this hand. If I pick it up in this hand, my right hand, I can make some scribbles. It kind of works, but I don't feel fluid. And that's really the same as my gender identity. I know that my female gender identity is where I feel most at ease with myself, most comfortable with myself. I interact with society in a better way. Something I never experienced before I gender transitioned about 10 years ago. And the expression is how I show up, how I tell you who I am, how I want to express myself to the world. Flamboyantly, femininely, masculinely or androgynously or just me, how I want to show up. I'm more than comfortable wearing, as I am today, a sweatshirt and some leggings. I'm also more than comfortable dressing up for a night out, putting a dress on and some heels and loads of makeup. I'm equally comfortable in both directions. So I recognise that I do conform to the social construct, the stereotype of what a man or a woman should dress like. And I like to fit into that. But often I'll just be me. I wear what I'm comfortable in. I'll wear for the weather or wear for what I'm doing today. So our identity up here and how we express, again, another two different, more additional dimensions on who we are on top of our sex and biology. Of course, we're physically and emotionally attracted to people. So we think about our sexuality, our romantic engagements. We can fall in love. We can want romantic engagement with someone of the same sex or gender or the opposite sex or gender. So we could be straight or gay or lesbian or asexual, have no sexual attraction, or aromantic, have no romantic attachment to people. And there are lots of other descriptions of how people express their sexuality and their romantic attachment. So again, these two more dimensions, emotional and physical, who we want to get down and dirty with is one, and then who we want to spend the night on the sofa curled up and having a hug as another one. So again, these are more dimensions. And then I touched on the social constructs, what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, and who knows what it means to be a non-binary person or a queer person, gender fluid. Who knows? Society didn't write those rules and didn't put a box around people. So we have to recognise that how we're expected to show up in the world, how we have to perform. And let's be honest, the closer you are to the norm of that bell curve, the closer you are to that line in the middle, the easier it is for you to be socially accepted. There's beauty bias, there's expectation bias. You don't behave like a man, you don't behave like a woman. You're too bossy. Ooh, you're too aggressive for a woman. You're hysterical, going crazy. We put all these labels on people, trying to police them back into their box to behave in a very fragrant, very soft, very mothering way as a woman, or very stoic and very, very butch as a man. And of course, we stray around. We stray with sexuality. We get homophobic, lesbophobic type labels thrown at us, even if we're straight. So again, society wants to box us into this little shape to make us behave the way we should. So let's think of it. We've got sex and biology. We've got our gender identity. We've got our gender expression. We've got our romantic attachment. We've got our physical attachment. And we've got our role expectations. It's so difficult being a human being sometimes, isn't it? We've got all these things going on in our heads. And trans people tend to break, as I say, this bell curve of normality, this line down the middle. We're not normal, whatever that means. So, as I say, we want to police people, we frown on people, we control people, and we drive people to try and be who we want them to be. It's kind of like road rage. You know, if someone pulls in front of you, you want to get out of your car and say, hang on a minute, you shouldn't drive that way. I think sometimes homophobia, transphobia, and lesbophobia, biphobia are kind of a bit like road rage. Someone's coming over and saying, you shouldn't behave this way. This is the way society should work. This is the way you have to meet my expectations. So, that's again, we're trying to bundle people into our definition of the world. So, it's moved on too quickly there. I pushed the button too quickly. So, under the covers, under our covers, we're just skin and bones, we're skeletons. Underneath, we're just skeletons. Yeah, the day we die, that's what we are. If you dig us up in 1,000 years' time, we're a skeleton. All of this other stuff is lost. So we get really excited by this. And you can see here on the left, we've got the biology, our expression, our identity. We've got our romantic attachment, our physical attraction, and we've got our cardboard box of how we're supposed to how we're supposed to exhibit ourselves. Then Disney came along, didn't they? Disney came along. Very helpful, Disney. They did a really great job. They told us what it means to be a girl, what it means to be a woman. Yay, a woman. She's born a woman. She wears all these lovely clothes. She falls in love with a man. She goes skipping through the forest with the animals, whistling and cooking and cleaning for the men, the dwarfs. So, she's doing her housewifely duties. And we see this time and time again reinforced in the media, reinforced in 50s and 60s and even 70s sort of films and things like that. How people are supposed to how people are expected to behave. And then Disney created Prince Charming, saves the day, has a big sword, rides on a horse, slaying a dragon, and then kissing the girl, saving the day, riding off into the sunset. That's kind of how we expect our men and our women to behave according to Disney. And of course, that's not the reality, is it? That's not the reality for anybody. Under the covers, we want to be ourselves. We want to pick and mix our own sexuality, pick and mix our own expression, how we show up, pick and mix our own identity. And we certainly don't want to be forced into someone else's box of how we're expected to behave or who we're expected to fall in love with. So when we think about today's definition of identity, of roles, of romantic and physical attraction, this shouldn't be the same preconceived ideas that we've had in the past, pushing people back into this box. Again, trans, non-binary, queer people, we destroy people's definition of normal and typical, and they want to push us and really feel that we're trying to erase or change the world into a way they don't like. But we've been doing this for millennia. This is, people often think that trans and non-binary people are a kind of internet fad. We came along with broadband, we came along with Twitter, and suddenly you can catch trans. Oh my God, what if I teach my children about what it's like to be trans? They'll all want to be it. This isn't the reality we face. The reality we face here is that trans people, non-binary people actually have existed throughout time and space. And we've got evidence of civilizations throughout the millennia, all independently evolving, that have multiple sets of gender identities or lack of. Some cultures have 5 or 6 definitions for someone's identity. Two-Spirit in the North America have an essence of male or female, but there are tribes and people from other parts of the world, as I say, have these 6 or 7 different definitions of identity of who they are. None of them connected by internet. None of them have mobile phones. None of them are tweeting each other or texting each other, say, hey, I've got this new idea about gender. How about your tribe try it as well? So clearly through human evolution, we've evolved to not be constrained. And I think we could probably blame colonialism and religion and other faiths for trying to reinforce this rule set. As a country, we were pretty good at exporting our colonialism around the world. And if you look at a lot of the territories that have homophobic or strong anti-gay laws, they are as a result of colonial exporting, if you like, either from the UK or from France or Netherlands or other sort of North European countries that exported a lot of this in the 1700s. So we're not new. We've been around forever. What it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman, our gender box, is relative to time and space. What it's like to be a man a woman in 2023 is completely different to what it's like to be a man or a woman in 1823. Or what it's like to be a man or a woman today in the UK is different to the Middle East. It's different to South America. The roles and things we perform are different. So we can't just say, I saw some things on the internet the other day talking about toilets. We talk about these toilets being this huge, great, mega deal. In China, often a toilet is a hole in the floor. There is no sensitivity about gender when it comes to a hole in the floor. You just go in there, do what you got to do, put some earth on it, and wash your hands if you're lucky, and move on with your life. So, we've created these constructs of toilets and showers and modesty and all these things. We can also uninvent them. We can also say, actually, they're not relevant. And we don't have to police people into my little box to accept them and without judgment. So let's talk about some terminology. We've got 20 minutes to go, so I'll finish in about 5 or 6 minutes, I hope, and then we've got time for about 15 minutes worth of questions. So do save your questions up. I can see the chat popping up. We'll get to some of those. So trans umbrella. 20 years ago, the trans umbrella was like a brolly, a little tiny brolly. Now it's more like a golf umbrella. We've got lots of terms in there. We often get confused, but fundamentally, these terms tend to fall under the trans umbrella. So non-binary, queer, transvestite, gender non-conforming, drag. Some and some don't fit neatly into the trans box. So people who are non-binary, many people don't see themselves as trans. Some people who are intersex don't see themselves as transgender. Cross-dressers often don't see themselves as transgender. So again, by putting these labels under this massive great umbrella, what we can be doing is confusing people. So it's really important to remember which ones are and which ones aren't. So I put some question marks there that people who hold these identities may well debate that whether they do or whether they don't. So again, it can be problematic if you make assumptions. Excuse me. But certainly things like drag, cross-dresser, transvestite, I would say fall outside of the trans umbrella, not to be exclusionary, but just because they don't technically fit the strong definition of what trans means. But again, the umbrella is fully inclusive and welcoming if you see that as your umbrella. Let me go a few there. So what is trans and cis? I've used this term trans. So trans is from the Latin. It means on the other side of. And cis is also from the Latin, and it means on the same side as. They're both adjectives. They're both describing words, as in green and blue, door. Green is an adjective to describe the door. Tall, short, they're adjectives as well. So trans is an adjective. So trans woman, transgender woman, is a woman who is transgender. A cis woman is a woman who is cis, not transgender. And again, we have cis man, transmasculine, cis masculine as well. We tend to, in society, we tend not to give a label to the default. It always frustrates me when I'm watching TV and the sports programs and they talk about women's football, the women's premiership, the women's Super League. We don't have the male premiership. We don't have the male World Cup. We don't have the men's championship. But we seem to want to label the women's one for some reason. I think it's probably things like tennis that are more progressive. They have women's and men's tennis, so they talk about it interchangeably. So we don't talk about the word cis because it's kind of the default. And we've grown up not needing a word to describe it, so we just don't use it. It's not a slur. It's not intended to create or force somebody to have a word that they don't like. It's just a reality. Same side, different side. My gender identity, I was on a different side than I was given when I was born. They picked me up at the ankles, had a quick look between my legs. It's a boy. They never asked, didn't check with me, but that's the reality that occurred. Transitioning. I'm not a great fan of the word transitioning because I realised, having been through my evolution, if you like, that transitioning is more about other people than it is about me. It's me becoming comfortable with who I am and then helping you become comfortable with who I am. But transitioning takes sort of kind of 3 phases. One, social. Hey, everybody, it's me. I'm here. Get to know me, that kind of thing. And then another one side of it is medical. Go see the doctor, get some tablets, get on a 7 or 8 year waiting list to talk about surgery or other things, pass a few tests, jump through a few hoops. Maybe you'll get allowed to have some surgery or have some medication. And then the other side of it is legal transitioning, which is all this big fuss around the Gender Recognition Act reform that Scotland's going through and what the Welsh government are talking about right at the moment. It's about getting legal recognition for your identity, for who you are. And I've changed my driving license, I've changed my passport. As far as I'm concerned, and the world's concerned, I can't prove who I was anymore. I don't have any documentation in my old name, so I can't prove who I was. Even my DBS check is in my name, no record of anything else. But I have applied for a gender recognition certificate, which will give me that final I'm me type document. Don't know why I need it, but apparently the government say I'm not a real woman unless I have it. So I was good enough for myself until maybe some of the recent developments in the government. Now I feel I need it just to protect myself from further discrimination down the line. So yeah, transitioning, different for everybody. People are non-binary, people are gender fluid. There is no linear path. I called it transitioned in chunks. I transitioned here, and here, left that bit, came back to that bit, did this, did a bit of medication, did a bit of that, had a hair transplant, had my beard lasered off. So I did a lot of things, but not necessarily in a linear sequence. So when we think about transitioning, we can't think about it as a start, middle, and end. It's just wandering around a field, trying to figure out what you want to do next and who you are, how that evolves for you. So someone who's non-binary, they have no fixed sense of gender identity. I suppose in reality, they've looked at this gender box and said, I don't want to be boxed in and form into a definition of gender. And they're quite enlightened in that respect. So they've escaped the construct of gender completely, doing themselves their way, breaking the rules their way, fitting in their way. So it's very important that we think about non-binary people as not having a fixed sense of gender in any traditional term. Some people may be non-binary, feminine leaning. Some people may be non-binary, masculine leaning. Some people may be non-binary, who have maybe a very androgynous. But I've got some friends who are non-binary who are extremely feminine. Lipstick, makeup, absolutely gorgeous as a woman. I've got some men who look non-binary people who are assigned male at birth who are absolutely look fantastic in their tux and everything else, but they're non-binary. So we can't make an assumption that just because someone's non-binary, they don't look or perform or express themselves in a traditionally male or female way. Again, so we've got to separate expression from identity, from sexuality. These are layers of who we are, and they're not necessarily intertwined. Someone is fluid, their gender identity is not fixed. They may wax and wane between different masculinity and different femininity. Talked about gender recognition certificate. Currently, it's 2-year wait. You have to exhibit yourself and evidence yourself for 2 years. Say, I've been a good girl, I've been a good boy. Please give me a certificate. There's no non-binary recognition. And lastly on this page, we've got pronouns. Pronouns, someone's, you can call me Joanne, or you can say she. So pronouns is just a short way. It's a construct that we use in language to shorten and remove the complexity from sentences. So she, he, hers. So my pronouns are she and her. Someone who's masculine, male identified would use he and him. And someone who's non-binary often use they and them. And if you're confused by they and them being singular, it's who does this pencil belong to? I don't know who that was or who they are. When I see them, I'll give it back to them. So we already use singular they and them when we don't know the identity. So it's not something that's too complicated. Shakespeare used it as well. There are neo-pronouns. I won't cover this now, but if you Google neo-pronouns, you'll find a whole definition of different people's expressions and identities from a non-binary perspective. Here's a table of some pronouns, and again, you can look these up yourself. So here's some terms. So transphobia or sexism is using critical language, that questioning, those microaggressions I talked earlier. Dead naming is using someone's past name. Misgendering is using incorrect pronouns, incorrect language. And often misgendering occurs in a way that is maybe it's more surprising. How you describe me, how you talk to me. If I say, can I use the toilet? And they say, oh yeah, the gent is down there. So you may not have thought you misgendered me, but you did. You treated me in a misgendering way. There's also bad language. I'm not going to go into some of the bad language. I'm sure you can think of some language that's associated with Rocky Horror Picture Show in Thailand and other places. Some words that we used to use in the 60s and 70s. So I'm not going to educate people who don't know the phrases, but if you do, we know there's a bad language. And of course, not making assumptions, not assuming that I'm married to a man, married to a woman, or married to someone who has a gender at all, or that I'm married, or that I have children. So we can make assumptions, and we can, when we're greeting people and meeting people, by having those assumptions, we can cause a microaggression, we can disrespect somebody. So again, it's best to ask, best be informed. And we must adopt a zero tolerance policy in our workplace to any victimization, harassment, banter, bullying, whatever that may be. So we've got 12 minutes to go. I just want to leave you one thought. You are amazing as allies. We do need you. It's far more powerful to someone to speak up on our behalf, our community's behalf, than it is for us to say something. When we're challenged, we find it very difficult to defend ourselves. When allies speak, their weight carries further. So I do appreciate that, and thank you so much.